Hey everybody, how's it going? You might know me by Russell Zimmerman on my writing credits because I like to sound a little bit less like someone's dog. But if you know me, or are in my circle on Facebook, you probably know me as Rusty. Well, that is very nice of you to say. Um, yeah, I'm glad to be here, and I figured that would be a cool kind of starting off point because, as your viewers have no doubt noticed, I am as lily white and pale as you and Mac, who we can normally see. Um, and part of inclusivity in gaming is also talking about like ethnicities and stuff. So it's a little bit of a sticky wicket for nerdy white boys like me to try and be representative of like demographics that we're not. So yeah, I thought it would be kind of cool to talk about that, attempts at representation, but also kind of trying to fight back in the hobby against like gatekeeping bullshit and like what dudes that look like me and people that look like James can do to try and help out. Hey everybody, it's good to be here on this side of the camera instead of hanging out in chat. It almost feels like I stole Mac's spot, which feels bad. But I am here today nominally to hang out with Mac and James. Turns out it's just James. And try to talk about all the stuff you guys have been talking about in prior episodes, but from the perspective of like a cis white dude that is ensconced in the industry, and like what I can try to do to still help to be an ally to the groups that I'm not a part of, how I can try to represent other people and keep the hobby inclusive and all kinds of good stuff like that. So you might know me by Russell, as James introduced me. Odds are good you know me as Rusty instead, but all my fancy pants writer credits are Russell, so I don't sound like a dog. Yeah, I mean, trying to. There is a certain sense of belonging and protection and safety and anonymity that dudes like me and people like James have at Gen Con and stuff. And it's important to kind of use that to try to make it all welcoming for the people that don't look like us. So, yeah. And as an industry professional, and it still feels weird to call myself a professional anything, I do have privilege that most people don't. And yeah, I want to use it for good instead of evil. Okay, I'm gonna fill the airwaves while James tries to figure out what's wrong. I can hear him just fine, so I was not able to tell him that anything was amiss. And because I was talking, I think Felicia didn't want to holler it at me from the other room, which is a mistake because nothing I say is important or has been since I stopped being a college lecturer. But any chance that anybody got sound from James there, give us big cheerful thumbs ups in chat because we're going to have him just interject every now and then to kind of test. Because again, I'm hearing him just fine in Discord. Mac heard him just fine in Discord before the show. But yeah, we're still kind of crapping the bed here. But that's okay. Nobody came here for professionalism and crisp, clean audio technical work. They came here for our sparkling personalities and our insight into the hobby. Um, First thing that I kind of thought of when James and Mac offered to let me on the show was okay, when I maybe invited myself a little too. Whatever, don't worry about it. Mind your business. First thing I thought of was okay, and the but was like I'm a cis white dude that's stockily into middle age, and how much can I really talk about like problems in the hobby with bullying and women not feeling welcome and ethnic groups being made unwelcome and more visibly clearly LGBT people being made unwelcome. Like I'm bi, but nobody cares, like unless my internet browser cookies come up, nobody knows I'm bi because I'm a dude married to a girl, and that's pretty clear, especially when we're walking around Origins fucking holding hands. Um, so, all right, all right, guys, we're trying out James again. Did you guys get any sound from him? We tried out a new audio input. Is it working out there, chat? I feel I feel like oh nope, we still do not have sound from James. All right then, James will keep dicking around with Discord, OBS, Twitch, uh, the uh, the little rabbit ear antennas on top of his computer, the hamster wheel that runs his internet, and whatever else he's got. And you, lucky bastards and bastettes, get to listen to me just keep on rambling for a little bit while I get to keep hearing James cracking up in my fucking ear. Um, First thing that comes to my mind when I think about representation in gaming is the World of Darkness. And here I'm talking like old school World of Darkness, 90s era World of Darkness, when that shit was new, right? And like we looked at stuff like Werewolf the Apocalypse having tribes like the Wendigo, and everybody was like, oh man, that's cool. And nobody thought to say, like, hey, how come all Native Americans, regardless of tribe, are lumped into like the Wendigo if they're badass, or the Uktena if they're shaman, and like Europeans get like the other six tribes, right? Like nobody uh, thought like why does Ireland get its whole ass own werewolf tribe with the Fianna? And it's because an awful lot of their target audience are like Irish Americans, right? And like why do the Get of Fenris get all Germany gets just its own fucking tribe? And so at the time it was actually really cool. But when you go back and you look at it 25 years later, and all Native Americans are either braves or shaman, it feels a little bit cringy, like it's some NFL team bullshit. Uh-oh. Hey, James, now you
Yep,
lost
yep.
me.
I saw that. I think that means my mic is working. I just think that my speakers are turned up too loud, or my headset is turned up too loud. But we're gonna
So
find out.
can people hear James yet?
Come on, give me something here. I swear to God, I've just changed seven different settings on this stupid
Oh,
thing.
they hear James.
Hey, we figured it out. I'm
Can
not
people
going to
still hear
admit what I
me?
did or what was wrong, but I figured out what the problem was. Yes, I will be quieter than normal, which means I'll talk at my normal speaking volume instead of being quieter than I am in real life. So, that way it doesn't pick up these. Anyway, go on.
All right. So yeah, when we look back at the World of Darkness today, and we see that like all Native Americans are either literally like Indian braves or Indian shaman, it feels kind of like the fucking NFL, right? Like it's pretty cringy, it's pretty racist. It may have been well intended, but in hindsight, it's not super. And this is without even getting into the Ravnos clan in Vampire and a source book literally called World of Darkness Gypsies, where you get supernatural magic powers because of your Rom blood, making you able to do illusions and seduce people and stuff. So um, it was groundbreaking at the time. Shadowrun was pretty freaking groundbreaking at the time when America broke down and most of America got taken over by the Native American nations. That is multiple different tribes, multiple different tribal nations that are recognized like by the UN or whatever as full countries. Like that was really badass in 1989 when it came out. And the fact that magic came back into the setting due to the Great Ghost Dance and that Native Americans were like overrepresented in the magic user community and that Native Americans were represented in like the archetypes in the core book. And there was undercurrents of Native American kind of classical style throughout a lot of the artwork. Like that was all really cool then. But looking at it now, 30 years later,
Nothing
it,
really aged well.
or not as well as it could have. And there's been a concerted effort in recent years to tone some of that down. But then there's also occasionally been some pushback, especially on the art front. Like the composition of a piece is like the most important fucking thing, I guess. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with Shadowrun Crossfire, or if anybody wants to do like a quick Google image search for Shadowrun Crossfire, you'll see cover art, and in that cover art, the Native American shaman character Koi Dog is
Oh,
wearing a
yeah, Koi
full
Dog.
like Plains tribe headdress. And like A, she's not like fucking from those tribes, and like B, you don't just wear that shit around on the street. And then like C, for me, like what I was concerned with was that I wrote the intro fiction for that story based on the artwork, and they're infiltrating a facility like in disguises. And then all of a sudden at the last minute they changed the artwork to give her this giant fucking headdress, and it's like, guys, and just they wanted it to be more overt. They figured that more representation was better representation, and to me it's just kind of yikes, right? And like Mac pointed out, a lot of the artwork for Koi Dog isn't great. Like in her character booklet in the beginner box for SR5, to be clear, she's just like chilling naked in a sweat lodge type of thing. And I'm like, hey, how come Hardpoint the dwarf isn't sitting in his fucking tidy whities taking apart a drone? Right? Like, why don't you see this hairy little dwarf dude all naked? Why is it like the one, like super photogenic elven girl on the team that happens to be naked in her pic?
Yeah.
Um, you guys want like a fucking spoiler for some Shadowrun stuff? Uh, Answer me in chat, and if you do, then I'll give you a little bit of a spoiler. But where I'm going with is that stuff that was representation in a positive way 25 or 30 years ago isn't today. And you can also see that outside of like ethnic representation with stuff like Buffy, where some of this stuff hasn't necessarily aged as well as it should. Some of that is like Joss Whedon baggage that's
Mm-hmm.
come to light, but But still, that doesn't take away from the fact that, like, at the time, Buffy was fucking dope, right? And you've just gotta look at this stuff almost like a historian does, only for a much smaller period of time, and because it also makes your soul hurt to think of shows that you were watching in TV on college as being history now.
Yeah.
But that's kind of true. Like, you've just got to kind of filter it that way and try to look at the positive. The spoiler right here is while we're talking about Miss Myth's crew from the SR5 cover art and a lot of intro fic and the Seattle box set fiction and all this stuff, Hardpoint is gay. And because as of 2 days ago, it has been 4 fucking years since I sent in the second Jimmy Kincaid novel where Hardpoint has this conversation where it comes out. Like literally 4 years. I sent it on February 1st. And it's just been stuck in the pipeline. There's been printing and distributing and all these fucking issues. But yeah, Hardpoint, the like super cool little dwarf rigger dude, he left his Japanicorp job. And by the way, let's just talk about Japanicorps and Serari Man being the name for a Japanese wage slave. Like, it's literally just a mockery of how Japanese accents translate salary, right? It's just they're called Serari Men in Shadowrun. Fucking yoinks. But
I didn't even know
Hardpoint,
that. Like,
yeah,
that was something
yeah.
I never knew.
Yup. But yeah, Hardpoint left his gig at his Japanese corp because they were forcing him to marry an orc girl. And there's a scene in this novel where that comes out, and Sledge goes, "Hey, fuck you! What? You didn't want to marry an orc?" And Hard goes like, "No, I didn't want to marry a girl." And then Sledge is like, "What? Oh." And then, like, right then, fucking Gentry gets out of the shower in the hotel room that's the boys' room at their safe house, and Sledge starts freaking out. He's like, "Put on a fucking shirt!" And, like, Hardpoint doesn't say anything, but suddenly, like, Sledge is being, as an orc from the Barrens that basically grew up in a ghetto, but, like, he can still be bigoted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, being a marginalized group or being in a marginalized group doesn't make you not necessarily having your own baggage. So it's a scene that I'm really fucking proud of. I wish that it was out by now. But yeah, take a look for it when it comes out. It's going to be in Stirred. There has been some good news on that front lately about some stuff getting jostled loose in the pipeline. But yeah, I've just been wanting for literally 4 years for that shit to come out so that we can have a group where 2 of the 5 are women. There's a broad spectrum with like 1 human, so like every meta species is in there. The face of the group is a troll. The troll of the group is a woman, and isn't like their big burly street sam. Like, I was pretty proud of like the team that I put together after that initial artwork that I got to kind of help with. And then I like the fact that of the 3 dudes in the team, Gentry is kind of a nerd falling all over himself for Koi Dog. So he and Sledge kind of have a very heteronormative kind of love triangle thing. But like, one of the 3 dudes is gay. And I thought that was cool. And I'm hoping it'll come out pretty soon. But I thought I'd spoil it.
Yeah. So I mean, with that kind of segues into one of the questions that I did want to ask you was that, what, how is it that you can, in your writing and all that, I mean, it seems like you've done a pretty good job of being inclusive and putting marginalized groups into your writing, but why is it that it seems like it's so difficult for everyone else? I mean, are you just like a super outlier, or is it just people are just kind of scared to do that sort of thing?
I mean, first off, like, I don't even know that I've been that great about it. Like, in retrospect, it occurs to me, like, damn, what if I made Kincaid gay? Like what would have happened? Would the character have still caught on if, on top of kind of breaking the elf stereotype, because he's just like a burly, street savvy dude, right? He's not really much of an elf. But like, what if he was fucking gay and he was still this hard-boiled noir PI? Like fuck. But instead, I went like straight hetero with him when like one of his defining things is, you know, this former romance that he had with Turbo Bunny, you know, years ago, which I meant to be part of an addiction cycle, because I wanted to show that he did struggle with BTL addiction and the loss of his magic. So I was trying to go for like a sympathetic addiction cycle. And to me, one of the things about Turbo Bunny was that she was a BTL addict. And I wanted to play with that angle. And then I was like, hey, this is also a way to have a cool car. So fuck it, let's roll with that. But, you know, it occurred to me later that there's like all sorts of just fucking hetero bullshit over and over again when you're leaning on some of the noir tropes of, you know, this leggy dame all in black walks in. But also with some of the stuff I try to poke fun at, with like everybody assuming that like Kincaid fucks his ally spirit. Like a lot of people say that like Jimmy's in love with his ally spirit. I'm like, dude, it's supposed to be like a father-daughter relationship, and like I don't want to kink shame. Like if that's your role play, like good on you.
Yeah.
Fucking have fun. But like I've never said anything romantic about them, and Jimmy's always frustrated when people do assume that. And some people are still just like so heteronormative that they assume because his ally spirit is a pretty elf, everybody's like, yeah, no, he's totally wanting to date that pretty elf. And it's like, no, that's also supposed to be another you know, kind of angle of stereotype, in that she is symbolic of his lost magical power and his kind of elvishness. So I was trying to make it like another loss issue, but it keeps getting turned into like a heteronormative thing. But yeah, I've tried, you know, when I can. Jimmy's best fucking friends are Skip and Trace, who are a lesbian couple. They play a much more prominent role in the next couple books because people just fucking dug them so much in Neat. So you're actually going to get some point of view chapters with Skip and Trace. Hopefully people will like those. But like, you know, it's stuff like that I've tried to do, but then I look at myself and I'm like, well, like shit, like, am I just making a black best friend? And then I was like, oh shit, I made Pinkerton black too. I did that because I don't remember a single fucking black dwarf in Shadowrun. Like there might have been some in artwork in the last 30 years, but I didn't remember any. So I was like, let's make Pinkerton a black guy.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever seen that either. Now that I'm thinking back on it.
Right? So I just was like, I thought I was trying to add some representation that was missing. And then instead I was like, oh shit, like Jimmy's a straight white dude and like his best friends are gay and black. So he can't be homophobic or racist. Right? Like that was like this thing that I did on accident. I was like, shit. So I've still been toying with it though, trying to maybe name drop an X. I do have some fiction coming on the way. The little enhanced fiction line that I launched with Adversary, the little new ones that we're trying to get going. You're going to have a point of view one of a male elven go-ganger talking about his male ex-boyfriend. That's
Nice.
also a character that's been name-dropped, actually. It's Koidog's brother, who was mentioned in Koidog's bio and in her contact list all the way back in the beginner box, because some of these stories were supposed to come out a long fucking time ago, and I was trying to tie a bunch of shit together. But yeah, there's an Ancients Go-Ganger that you guys have already met, that used to go out with Scout Who Kills 6 times, this burly badass street samurai dude. So like I'm trying to start pushing some of that representation a little more front and center, instead of it being somebody's friend or one of the 5 people on this team. Miss Myth is pansexual, but I haven't thought of a cool way to just spring that on somebody, and I guess I kind of didn't want to do both in one book, but Miss Myth is also pan. With Faces, it feels weird though, because everybody jokes about like bards seducing everything, and just
And
look
what
at
is a face but a Shadowrun bard?
right, like look at Jaskier and The Witcher, and like how fucking immediately, you know, people latched onto him and Henry Cavill, which of course is awful for both of them because they're such unattractive fellows.
Yeah.
But you know that whole kind of party face as out to seduce everyone trope coupled with making somebody buy or pan. I didn't want to go into that bisexual nymphomaniac thing, right? Which is another kind of harmful trope. I didn't want to lean into, Miss Myth just wanting to fuck everything that moves because she's the party face and sometimes she seduces people. So I haven't figured out how to reveal that she's pan, but like I'm trying. So I guess the only trick I can think of is to fucking try it, right? Like we recently had a guy post on Facebook, Matthew, a friend of mine, that's writing his first official Shadowrun mission, and he's including a lesbian couple that includes a trans gal. And
Nice.
he was just like, what do people think? Just trying to kind of get some input. And there was some pushback, and we got a couple people fucking kicked out of that group. But, he's trying.
Yeah.
And he said that even that he got a little pushback from. People were worried that it was like too political. And I'm like, what people? Because they suck. And it's cyberpunk. Cyberpunk is political. And also
By its
a
very
work.
nature.
Yeah, and like it's a work of fiction, and all fiction is fucking political. And if you never noticed that your sci-fi and fantasy was political, it's because you're fucking
You weren't
stupid.
paying attention, yeah.
Like, you have to purposefully miss that shit to think that works of fiction aren't selling you something. Even if all they're selling you is the fucking status quo, that's political.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's an innately conservative position.
Well, and that was something that I noticed at like a very, very early age, was that everything that I read and every piece of media that I consumed, there was always something that it was trying to say. And every time that I hear people come up there with that bullshit of, oh, why does everything have to be political now? Why is it always, everything has to have an agenda? Everything did have an agenda. Just because you weren't paying attention doesn't mean that everybody else is wrong for wanting that sort of thing.
Yeah, and like inserting an LGBTQ character or a black character or fucking whatever, like anybody of not cis white,
yeah, cis white.
and often male in a lot of genres, like that's not fucking political. They're just people, and here they are, right? Like that's not actually or shouldn't actually be a political statement, just to say, hey, queer people exist. Like that shouldn't be political, and it is deeply goddamn troubling that it is political.
Or that it's by default people think that it's a political statement.
Right, and that you're like ramming it down their throats. And it's like, all right, listen, if I say gay dude and the immediate next phrase out of your mouth is ramming it down your throat, like, first off, we might have to have a talk, buddy, because I know closeted homophobe is a trope, but like, check your phrasing, pal. But like, it's not a fucking agenda. It's just like showing little gay kids that like they're not weird.
Yeah,
right?
and that it's normal, and that you have somebody that you can look to as like, oh wow, that's me on the screen, that's me in a book, that's me in a comic. Because being like your stereotypical white dude, I have all that. I mean, just I would start listing them, but shit, we'd be here for the next 30 minutes with me just going through the list of thousands upon thousands of comic books, movies, and all that. And the fact of that I've brought this up, I think, in the last episode. The fact of that, like, everybody was shocked, and there was a little bit of backlash for like Black Panther whenever it came out. And it's like, why? Like there are people who read comics that are black. There are people that like want to see these things on the screen and want to see themselves in characters.
Yeah, and like the same people that scream representation doesn't matter will then scream, Black Panther, right? And like, dude, you don't get it both ways. I know you're used to getting it both ways because you're a straight white dude and used to getting fucking whatever. But like you don't get to tell black people that representation doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. in the whole ass MCU, look, you've got Falcon. Isn't that enough for you? Right? And then you don't get to then also turn around and say, but anyways, Black Panther's racist. Like you need to fucking pick one, champ.
Like
You
pick
know,
a
and
side.
yeah, either representation doesn't matter or representation does, and you're just fucking racist. Like, just pick an argument. I went to go Google fictional white male because earlier today I was doing this meme of like top 3 anything, and I would occasionally somebody would ask me a question that was just too broad, and I would go Google fictional blank blank or named swords and just kind of jog my memory. And I went to Google fictional white male, and it found me 2 bagillion fucking entries. And before you can find anybody that has tried to list fictional white male, you get list of fictional horses, and you get list of fictional wolves, and like you get Wikipedia pages for lists of other stuff that have the word like white in it, because nobody has ever tried to list fictional white male, because that's basically just the internet.
Yeah, roughly it's just the internet. I mean, it's pretty much everything else as well. So one thing that I did want to ask you is like being that you're an author and being that you kind of have a bit more insight in how to spin a good yarn. One of the big things that I know has been an issue with a lot of like gaming and that sort of thing is how to introduce representation without being ham-fisted about it.
Right, and that's something where again I potentially have trouble because I am a cis white dude, and everybody knows how to put cis white dudes into stories. You just start writing a story and don't describe the character, and everyone decides that they're a cis white dude by default, right? So what I've tried to do when I have introduced characters that I am not is talk to one of my friends that are that. And go, hey, listen, can you just kind of read this scene for me? Check out this chapter. Hey, what do you think about this? And you don't want to make whatever they are, like whatever, not cis white male thing they got going on, don't make that their only characteristic, because then you're back to kind of tokenism. Make a character that happens to be blank, because again, the point is you're trying to just make a character and you're trying to show people that just people are people. So like this reveal with Hardpoint happens in like the 5th thing that I wrote about him. It's hinted at, and if you go back and read his bio where he says he quit due to a forced marriage, it clicks into place, right? But like it happens in like the 5th or 6th piece that he's in. It happens halfway through the story, and it happens after there's been banter between Sledge and Gentry and Coy Dog and Myth and Hardpoint. So it's kind of just another comedic beat. And it's a way to make Sledge kind of the butt of a joke instead of Gentry, because Gentry's just kind of a dweeb. He's got charisma too and a suprathyroid gland. He's like the hyperactive nerd. So I sometimes make him the butt of jokes, because he's got, elf poser and he falls over himself with elf girls. And, so I wanted to make Sledge kind of the butt of a joke for a change of pace. So it's not actually a scene that's all about Hardpoint. It's not a big melodramatic reveal. Like, he doesn't say it on his deathbed. It doesn't come up because he's getting gay bashed. Like, fucking people already know enough about gay bashing in real life and stuff. Like, it's not the 80s anymore. Not every gay story needs to be sad, right? Like, it's a thing that came up in conversation in a pretty organic way, I think, in that scene, and then it doesn't matter. Like, I'm not suddenly showing Hardpoint flirting with a bunch of dudes, right? Or like Sledge and Gentry don't walk back into that room in the safe house and just fucking like see Hardpoint with a harem of hot elf dudes, right? Like it's not it doesn't become the defining thing of Hardpoint, you know.
Yeah, it's just kind of it's kind of like it's a passing comment, and that's something like you say that just kind of happened naturally. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to do anytime I'm including characters like that. You know, Skip and Trace and their romantic relationship doesn't particularly matter when they pop up in Neat. You know, they could literally just be business partners that are bounty hunters slash bail bondsmen slash whatever. But I was like, hey, why not? Right? And I've had people draw me fan art of Skip and Trace because it just hit a fucking chord with people to have a pair of lesbians, you know, as represented characters in Shadowrun in this, you know, pulp noir PI manly man story type of thing. But I don't beat people over the head with it every time I mention Skip and Trace. You know, Jimmy doesn't call him up on his headwear trances and then like interrupt them making out every goddamn time, right? Or like they're not, you know, they're not out shopping for strap-ons. You know, it's you don't have to fucking make it the pivotal thing. You know, just mention it and make them cool, and that's enough. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there are times that I do get a little more mouthy with my political messages, a little more open with them. There's going to be a passage in this same novel, or actually, no, sorry, in the novella that's also been taken a while. Chaser coming soon to stores near you, somewhere maybe. Um, but there's this whole stretch of that where Jimmy's just talking shit about the Humanist Poly Club. And then I got bored enough that when I started pitching e-fiction ideas to Jason, just tossing them out there, this one for Adversary, this first one that's out, it's basically all just a story of Jimmy talking shit about the Humanist Poly Club, and by extension about the alt-right, and by extension about just fucking conservative backwards hateism. Because it's Jimmy on a stakeout outside a Humanist safe house, and he's just fucking sitting there, and Adversary's like, hey, you should go kill him. And he's like, yeah, I probably should. like you're right. The world, the world would probably be a little better. But like, you know, it's like a 3,000 word story, and like 1,000 words of it is me talking shit about their stupid fucking flags and all these hate symbols that they steal from all over the world, and how all these hate symbols belong to losers, and like this, you know, how one character in it, the kind of main antagonist, which I also, she was an abusive spouse and parent, but I made her the woman because I want to fucking remind people that it's not always the dudes that are abusive in relationships.
Speaking
Yes,
from experience, you are absolutely correct.
you know, it is more often the dude, and I'm not at all trying to minimize abused wives or girlfriends, but in this one, it was the wife that falls into a kind of depression spiral. And then after the divorce and the custody, it gets worse because actually she's dealing with her own fucking depression and addictions and shit. But she goes in a very unsympathetic direction where she starts to hate everyone else in a very Humanist Poly Clubby way. But like Jimmy rattles off the shit that she hates for like a paragraph while just talking about what a pathetic loser she is, you know, and it's just like it's cathartic to write that. The exact quote that I got from Jason, the line developer, was, "This is right on the line of revenge porn, Rusty, but yeah, let's go ahead and publish this." So I was like, "Fuck yeah," you know. So you know, it was fun. It's 99 cents. Go buy it. I'll put a link up in chat because I'm a whore. And I mean that in a respectful way to sex workers. But I will literally do anything to get you people to buy these. And now you all know I'm bi, so like whatever. If Felicia isn't watching right now, everything's fine. But yeah, go check out Adversary.
I'm half expecting to Flea to like pop up in the chat and just be like, "Nah, he's good."
But yeah, so Adversary was fun and cathartic to just kind of point out how dumb and backwards that sort of shit is. And it was like, Yeah, I know. I'm going to beat people over the head with it this time. Like, this isn't positive representation. This
Hey,
is me literally reminding the worst parts of the fandom that they are awful. And like just over this
let's
weekend,
not do that.
I told a Shadowrun fan that he's acting like a Humanist member.
Oh wow.
The way this fucking dude was talking about trans people, he kept calling them the gender dysmorphic and the people that suffer from the illness of gender dysmorphia, and like really fucking dehumanizing shit. And I was like, hey man, imagine if you were talking about people with pointy ears right now.
Yeah.
Like if you were calling UGE an illness, right? And if you were saying that, orcs are people suffering from being, Homo sapien robustus, like, hey, buddy, who do you fucking sound like? Right? And he fucking lost his shit. Like, he totally flipped his shit. He left that Shadowrun group where this discussion was happening, and he went to another Shadowrun group and made a post complaining about how all Shadowrun 6th edition fans are communists and all the writers of the new Shadowrun stuff are communists and liberals. And I'm like, this guy got so goddamn tilted. And he specifically said one of their writers, insulted and attacked me by saying I was humanist. And I'm like, but you fucking are. Like that's the thing. Like literally just take away the fact that you're talking about people being trans and say you're talking about people being orcs and trolls instead and fucking listen to yourself. And like that is humanist, you fucking dummy.
Like it's
Like
literally it's not even like it's not even like it's comparable. I mean, it's the exact same thing, just a different group.
right? Like they are literally the inheritors of fascism and racism and the KKK and all that bullshit. And they always overtly have been. And this isn't SR6 getting woke. This is, look at the goddamn artwork for the Humanist Poly Club NPC in your Shadowrun first edition book. The motherfucker's wearing a clan hood. Like, just go goddamn look at that, you nerd. And that was 1989. That was Jordan Weissman. That was the fucking OGs of Shadowrun saying, look at these fucking losers. Look at how their stat line compares to a security guard. Like look at these goddamn dorks and look at them in their stupid pointy hat. And look how one of the quotes from the Humanist Poly Club NPC is like, I'm not hiding behind a mask. Yeah. And like, it's this just fucking cowardly bullshit. And like, bro, that was SR1,
Yeah.
right? Like, this shit isn't new.
And it's always been here.
Yeah, and like, this isn't SR6, this isn't even SR5. Like, look at fucking Steve Kenson's work back in SR3. People give me props for having some queer characters in Shadowrun, and I'm like, bro, look at Kenson. Like, the main character of his series, Tommy Talon, was gay. And again, some of it might be cringy by modern standards, like Tommy actually was kind of in love with his ally spirit. There was potentially a problematic age difference between a couple of gay characters. One of his runner friends, a gal, was thinking about getting gender reassignment surgery, not because she was trans and was actually a he, but because she wanted Tommy to love her back. And like, that's kind of weird, but like, that's not like an example of a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
Like, don't pretend to be trans any more than you would pretend to be cis to try and make somebody fucking love you, right?
Yeah.
But like, it was there and it was representation. And like, Tommy Talon was this dope ass fucking combat mage, and that shit was like SR3, like at the latest, right? I think the first of them might have even been SR2. So like this shit's always been there. You just haven't paid attention, you fucking dweeb.
Well, yeah, and it's like in the chat, Mac also brought up that Star Wars is literally anti-fascist at its core, and that brings up another good point about fans. Let me make sure I got actually on camera, but that everybody's sitting there saying that the new Star Wars films have this agenda behind them, and now everything is so PC and all that shit. And it's like, and especially what they did with I can't remember her name, Marie Tran, is that right? Rose,
Yeah.
the woman who played Rose. Everybody's sitting there, talking shit about, oh, we have this, female fronted character, and then like with Rey, she's a Mary Sue and all this other kind of bullshit. Where it's like, Kelly Marie Tran, thank you, Mac. But it's one of those things like, if you look at the original Star Wars, it's kind of like what Mark Hamill himself said on his Twitter. I mean, if it weren't for Leia, Han and Luke would be stuck in the Death Star still, and they'd have been fucked.
Yeah, like women have always been there. There hasn't been enough of them, of course, but they've always fucking been there. And of course, it is all expressly and overtly and like literally been, hey, let's fight space Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
Like Lucas has been very clear about having been inspired by like pulp heroes that fought Nazis. Right. And of course, his famous friendship with Spielberg, and then you cross over with Harrison Ford being Indiana Jones and all that shit. But like stormtroopers, like that was an elite kind of military force in World War I in the German army. And then the Sturmabteilung, if I'm saying it right, Sturmabteilung, something like that. It translates to like the Storm Regiment or the Storm Soldiers or the Storm Detachment. That was the fucking paramilitary wing of the Nazi party when they were rising to power. That was like the fucking Proud Boys, right? Like that type of bullshit that then turned into the fucking SS. And a lot of those guys just immediately enlisted, and their fanaticism and street fighting was rewarded with better positions in Hitler's army. But that's called like the fucking Storm Detachment. Like where do you think Stormtrooper is from, you dummy? Right? Like that's literally a term for like a German military unit. And like look at their fucking uniforms, right? And like just look at that stuff, and look how until Finn, and I'm sure there's of course there's exceptions in extended universe stuff, but the Imperials that you see on screen, including the former Imperials like Han and in Wedge Antilles and Tycho and all of those guys, and Luke Skywalker, who was a wannabe Imperial, but like all of them were like white men, like all of them. And do people just think that's a coincidence, or did they just not notice that they were all white men because they're used to everything being all white men? It's like yeah, it's totally fucking space Nazis, and this new shit isn't the new shit. You were just dumb when you were young.
Exactly. And again, I mean, it kind of goes right back to the point we were making before. It's like, just because you weren't paying attention doesn't mean it wasn't there. It just means that you weren't paying attention.
Or that you were paying attention and you didn't think it was that bad.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other thing. I went on a bit of a Facebook rant about Imperial fanboys and how it's like a warning sign in a lot of ways. If it's part of a larger, pattern of behavior, and if people say Empire's not that bad, like no, like
they literally blew up a planet because they didn't like one person.
Right, like they're literally lawful evil, and like some of the good ones are lawful neutral.
At
like the best
best.
examples people can give of like good Imperials are the lawful neutral ones who are okay with the lawful evil stuff. So it's like no, bro, they are like explicitly and clearly space Nazis. They commit war crimes literally worse than anything humankind has ever seen, because between the Empire and the New Order, like whole ass planets,
Whole systems.
Yeah, and yeah, it's just like no, these are expressly and clearly racist fucking bad guys.
Yeah, and like the only good Imperial that you ever see in the movies, in the fiction, and all that.
Yeah, let's focus on original trilogy a little more if we're going to get into spoiler territory. Just a reminder.
Yeah, but like the only ones, and I'm mostly talking about like extended universe stuff. And it's like the only good Imperials are the ones who realized how bad it was, and they stopped being Imperials.
Right. And like that's a dope character arc that I love.
Mm-hmm.
So like I won't lie, I've made Star Wars characters that are Imperials before, but it's always with the immediate intention of them fucking yeeting out of there. Just like there's a dude in G.I. Joe that was former Cobra. Was it Mercer? I want to say it was Mercer. But like that was neat. It was intriguing to me to have a guy like Storm Shadow that went Cobra G.I. Joe, Cobra G.I. Joe, you know, the backseat fourth sea stuff, the redemptive arc of some supervillains in comic books, and like that's neat, you know, and having the guys like Tycho and Suntir Fel
Mm-hmm.
and I mean hell the lead of Battlefront 2, the video game, like it's a cool character arc, but you need to fucking highlight, oh my god, this is evil, deuces. You know, like you
Yeah.
need to show that that's a different type of Imperial than, nah, we blew up Alderaan. Yeah, whatevs.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
like I don't mind the blowing up the planet thing, but like, I'm not a huge fan of how like shitty the my new commander is, so that's why I'm leaving.
yeah. So, and people that miss these messages, people that fucking freaked out in the 90s because suddenly the X-Men are about gay rights. It's like, bro, like the main two characters, the most pop culture recognized of the original characters in the X-Men comic, because I'd say nowadays it's Wolverine, but like original, you're talking Professor X and Magneto, who were like literally partially meant to be stand-ins for Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X. It's not a coincidence that the supervillain was the Malcolm X, because that's how fucking white guys saw him. Not that they were a lot kinder to to Martin Luther King, but like they've always been about the civil rights, dude. Like that's expressly and clearly always been subtext and like clear text in the X-Men. But like with the legacy virus as like a stand-in for HIV, suddenly people are like, what? You know, and like they reveal that like Shatterstar is pan and Richter is bi and North Star is gay, and everyone's like, oh my god. And you know, and like they're suddenly flipping their shit
Mm-hmm.
about like how suddenly the X-Men are political, and I'm like, god, you're dumb.
Well, and
Like
that's like what Max said is, I mean, the X-Men have also always been about minority rights, which I mean, literally the God, I can't even remember what the name of the Xavier Institute is.
Professor Charles Xavier School for Gifted
That's
Youngsters.
it, School for Gifted Youngsters. The idea.
It's on Gray Malkin Lane.
Go on. I'm sure there's more.
All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
um, but no, it's like the Xavier's Institute was literally built to protect this marginalized groups from the world that hated them.
Yeah, I mean, like that was the tagline of the goddamn comic, and like, yes, you can lose some of that because their marginalized group is dude with laser eyes, right? So maybe you miss out on some of the marginalization because mutant powers are telling comic book superhero stories. So mutant powers tend to be combat capable,
Mm-hmm.
which makes them dangerous. But like, it's still always been there, and it's not unique to the X-Men. You know, it's fucking all comic books.
Yeah.
But like, especially the X-Men, when people get that whiplash with the X-Men, it's like, bro, what were you reading? Like, did you just like pay attention to nothing but snicked for like 50 years? You know, that suddenly you're mad about the X-Men being political. Like, fuck. And comics have always been this, you know, functionally countercultural,
Mm-hmm.
as Mac is pointing out, with Superman being an illegal immigrant and Captain America being invented to punch Hitler and protect Jews and was written by Jews. I've literally helped write a professionally published and circulated and used in classrooms textbook. Like my one paying history credit as a historian was partially writing a biography of Hitler in 2 pages That's fucking fun. But I still made room in the word count for Captain America punching Hitler in the face, fitting in as an important cultural moment in his, Hitler's impact on America, because that was the audience we were writing for. But like all comic books that have any meaning have that meaning, right? They've always been countercultural. They've always been progressive. Some comics, when written poorly, or when written by people that I legitimately believe are suffering from some level of PTSD from 9/11, and here we're talking like Frank Miller, there's a clear goddamn break in that dude's work, where he went from countercultural and progressive and poking fun at conservatism. Read Dark Knight Returns, and like the president there is Ronald Reagan as this terrifying fucking senile delusional right-wing guy, and Superman is bad in Dark Knight Returns as the avatar of American conservatism, right? But then like read later Frank Miller shit where he literally writes a fan wank story about Batman killing Muslims, right? And like I just think something, look it up. Okay. Look it up. Holy Terror is the name of the book. DC would not let him publish it, so he filed off the serial numbers, but it's literally fucking Batman killing Muslims. And yeah, like take a look at it. And like just something broke in Frank Miller, and I think something broke in a lot more Americans after 9/11. But I think that's symptomatic of something breaking in a lot of Americans about a lot of other issues as well, like really clearly. And it's unfortunate and it's gross, and it's certainly, he's not unique in that. But yeah, it sucks. And it's just proof that the nerds haven't been paying attention.
Yeah.
So there's that angle, and all you can do is kind of point it out when geeks are being shitty. And I want to segue kind of from there to something else that we can do. People that look like me and James in particular, we are wearing a Gen Con disguise year round by being like a fat dude with a beard, right? Like at a glance, we are invisible in downtown Indianapolis or Columbus for like a week at a time.
We completely blend into that entire sea.
Right, and that's not me saying that your non-binariness is not valid. I'm saying you don't look it. You don't fit the stereotype. You are not visibly androgynous. You still count as non-binary, but people at Gen Con don't know that. If they sit down with you at a game table, and Chelsea sits down with you at that game table, and if they lean over and start trying to explain the rules to Chelsea because she's just some chick, right? Like first off, she gets to claw their eyes out. Like she's got more nerd cred than fucking whoever would do that, but like also we look like them enough to speak up. So like if somebody doesn't know that I met my wife playing Shadowrun, fucking literally old school SR3, playing it online on the Shadowland BBS, like Felicia and I started to hang out because my Street Sam seduced her mage because he needed wards where he was going to be sleeping. So he started banging the combat mage so he could stay at her place. So we started hanging out more. So we started flirting. So then, friends with benefits didn't work out. And now here we are. But like, if somebody was to talk to Flea and try to go, oh, sweetie, here's how to make a shadow run, right? Like A, they deserve what they get from them, but like B, we've got the privilege in that geeky space, right? Like we've got the appearance of one of them. We are wearing shitty dude bro camouflage enough that we can say stuff. And like as another specific example of an extra layer of privilege that we've got. You do a podcast. I do every podcast that offers to buy me Taco Bell. Like, I write for Shadowrun. I GM stuff online, right? Like, we've got like extra geek privilege that means we can call that bullshit out even a little bit more.
Yeah.
And
to go back to your point about Chelsea sitting down at a table and having somebody try to mansplain a game to her, like, every part of me wants that to happen, just so I can watch her look at it, just be like, dude, I've made 15 characters in this game. I'm pretty sure I know what the fuck I'm doing.
Right, but at the same time, there are a lot of gamers that are scared to do that.
Absolutely.
Because they're not as badass as Chelsea and Flea, because they're at a con by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's scary to be queer or a woman or non-binary and be by yourself at a con 1,000 miles from home.
Yeah. So what is a way that we can do this? I know that we're technically going over time, and if chat doesn't like it, you can complain. That's fine. We're Riot House. We don't play by no rules. What is a way that we can take our privilege that we have and apply that in, like, let's say it's not Chelsea, it's not Flea, it's not somebody that we know. Instead, it's just, random girl gamer number 4 that sits down at the table, and then all of a sudden somebody starts mansplaining, and we can kind of recognize, oh, like, this doesn't need to be happening.
What I do, and what I've done in the past, at least when I see it online, which is where I spend more of my time than in the meat world, but I've also occasionally run into it at cons. The example I have at a con isn't Shadowrun, it's BattleTech. You guys know the BattleTech pods, the big arcade like cockpits that you sit in to pilot battle mechs. There was this really cool lady that looked about 55, maybe 60. She had this gorgeous like white hair and just a few wrinkles that you could tell she fucking smiled a lot.
Yeah.
Right? She was like Aunt May, but like one of the movie Aunt Mays, not like tiny little Yoda Aunt May. Right? And she was like, oh man, do you guys have an atlas in there? Like, she was looking at the like info to see if she can be in an atlas. And she fucking knew what an atlas was, right? And she's just fucking hyped because we're standing in line. Everyone's waiting our turn with our generic tickets. If you have extra generic tickets at Gen Con, look for those booths. They only take generics. So, like, if you don't want to turn in your generics for credit next year, just go play some fucking BattleTech till you run out.
And they are pretty cool. I'm here to tell you.
Pro tip for you. That's Rusty Zimmerman doing street smart. So do that. But anyways, we're just waiting our turn, and this lady just goes, "Oh man, do you guys have an atlas?" And these fucking dudes that were behind her were like, "Huh, dumb old lady, we're just gonna fucking blow you apart, Granny. You'll just be the biggest, slowest piece of shit on the table. Yeah, let's all gank this atlas. We're gonna fucking rape her." And Rusty went, and I just fucking went to the dudes wearing the jumpsuits, and I said, "Hey, these 3 guys right here, they were talking shit about this lady. They were making a really awful goddamn threat, and that lady ran off. So you go after her, please. And I'd like to talk to you about getting these 3 out." And those guys vanished. We weren't able to like report them to Gen Con, but like that all happened the year that I was hanging out with Jordan Weissman, and he knew me by name and face for like the first time. Jordan Weissman recognized me, and I wanted to like fucking drag those dudes into the vendor hall and have like Jordan Weissman beat them, right? Like for just talking like that as BattleTech fans. Like, that shit's not okay, So I'm kind of proud of myself that like the one time I really ran into something fucking vile, I called them on it, and I went to the local authorities as it is, and I also asked somebody to go run her down and bring her back, and they comped her like 5 games. It was fucking dope. Kudos to those guys. I mean, they handled it well.
Yeah.
So that's, face to face, I can call people on it, and like I'm not scared to call people on it because I don't have to be scared. I'm a fat middle-aged white dude, you know, and whatever. What I've done when I run into it online, when I've run into people being shitty to a marginalized geek in the Shadowrunners Union, and I can fucking ban people, but where I'm not a mod, but if it's still Shadowrun shit, I've literally PM'd somebody and said, hey, I'm sorry that you ran into that in the fandom. Those guys aren't right. And I don't just mean that like they're wrong-headed, but I mean like they are wrong when they say that you're not welcome here. And they were wrong for making you feel unwelcome here. So if it will help you feel more welcome, why don't you tell me about this first character you're trying to make? And we'll PM it and we'll hash this shit out, and I will help you try to make a character, which is literally something that other people in my situation like charge money for sometimes, like, you know, but I'm like, let's do this. But like also, hey, when this is done, can I sneak your character into a novel as somebody Jimmy Kincaid knows?
Nice.
Like, do you mind if I make you a background character in the book? Because I want to show these guys that you are more welcome here than they are.
Yeah.
Like that you belong in the shadows and they belong in Humanus.
Yeah.
You know, like how can I make a statement on that? And for me, I happen to be in a position where I can make that exact statement.
Yeah.
And I can, you know, steal their last names for Humanist people that somebody sees, or a racist cop that someone sees, or, you know, just whatever.
Okay.
And I can steal somebody else's name. So I'm in a weird position where I can uniquely try to make people feel welcome, but that's the same thing that anyone can do. If you're sitting down at a table to play a Shadowrun mission, you know, there's you and 7 other nerds, and somebody starts being kind of shitty to a girl or a black geek or a young geek or an old geek or somebody wearing some tabletop gamer, you know, rainbow stuff, or somebody wearing a pronoun pin. If somebody's being shitty to them, if you're not scared to, then A, you can run interference. And I don't blame you if you are scared to. My Gen Con experience is not most people's Gen Con experience. My Origins experience is not most people's. But, you know, if you are not afraid to, if you're comfortable doing so, don't be afraid to just interrupt and call people on it. And if you aren't comfortable doing that, you can still kind of run interference by taking over as the one helping them make a character, and then going, oh, okay, you knew that. oh, okay, you knew that part too. Hey, what about this? Oh, okay, you knew that. But just kind of run interference the same way you can if you see someone getting harassed on the street.
Yeah.
A thing where like girls will walk up to other girls and pretend to be a lifelong friend and go, hey, there you are, ready to go get dinner. Like if they see someone getting harassed, like if you're comfortable doing that shit, do that shit.
Yeah, and that's
So,
where
yeah.
one in that specific example, like it seems like it would be a good thing to just come up there and just be like, "Oh, hey, you're welcome to the table," or whatever, and just be like, "Hey, so have you made a character before? Cuz like I need a little bit of help. I need help making this deal, and I need a little bit of help making a character. Have you played this game before?" And you know, play the ignorance card a little bit and make them feel more welcome in that way.
Yeah, so, you know, just whatever you have up your sleeve to show who is welcome in the hobby, great. If you also happen to have it up your sleeve to show who isn't welcome in the hobby, fucking even better. But I don't blame people that don't.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you are afraid to personally interject at any goddamn con, these GMs and stuff are semi-professional. Like, they're at least getting comped a badge. So they have a position to eject someone from a game without question. And if not, there's Gen Con and Origins volunteers all over the place. So seriously, like, go be a fucking narc. Like this doesn't count as cops if it's a convention authority and you're helping somebody that's like being bullied. You know, like
that's being harassed.
Yeah, like that shit ain't snitching. So yeah, like roll with it.
So Ash did have a question
yeah,
earlier that I
you wanna read it? You want me
yeah
to read
I'll
it?
read it.
What?
So Ash had said that as a queer person writing queer stuff, I feel a tremendous pressure to not have my queer characters have any difficulties because I don't want to fall into the trap of making queer characters suffer. But it can be really hard to challenge them at times, and it sometimes feels like I'm coddling them rather than letting them truly occupy a world that feels honest. And how do I balance those things?
I have two answers. One as a writer, and one in general geekery. And I think, and Ash in particular already knows my general geekery one. But as a writer, I don't fucking care. Like I feel like as a queer person writing a story, your story is valid in queer spaces. It's not automatically like good. You should still take criticism as a writer, or whatever. This is all generic you. I've read a lot of Ash's stuff. Ash and I met writing collaborative fiction together, essentially. So Ash's shit is good. Read any of it that he is generous enough to share with you. Um, but just generic you. Um, your writing might not be perfect. You can still be criticized for it, and somebody might still point out that you're leaning on a trope too much. Whether that trope is you as a gay man writing about a gay man facing the struggles you faced as a gay man, or if that trope is the sword and the stone and a prophesized king, right? Like somebody might still say, like, hey, are you sure about this? It's a little maybe overdone, right? So the criticism can still be there, but your writing is still absolutely fuck all 100% Ninja Turtle dope ass valid. Like it still counts as you telling your version of a character, right? Like, so if it's cathartic for you to write about the struggles that queer characters face, then do that. And if you think that it adds something to whatever genre you're writing, whether it is a queer character that's about to find out he's a demigod or a queer character trying to make it through the day, like no matter how fantastic your story is, if you want to add stuff from your own experiences of queerness that add to the authenticity of the story, or your own experiences of blackness or transness or whatever, um, I think it adds to the authenticity of your story, and I think it's still an absolutely valid storytelling technique. I think the trick to the balance is the trick to like any other trope, and that's just making sure that there's still a story, not just a trope fest, right? Like make sure it's still a good story, and if it is, like fuck them, you know.
See, that was gonna be my advice is that it's speaking as a as amateur as you can get writer. If it seems like somebody's going to complain about you overusing something in your stories, fuck them. I mean, I mean, really, if somebody comes back on you for writing a queer character who has struggles, and especially if those are struggles that you have gone through, I mean, it's a perfectly valid thing for you to do because you're not using a trope at that point. You're writing about a common experience that you've had, and if people don't like that, and if people try and tell you that you're not doing the right thing, I mean, fuck them.
Yeah, and it doesn't even like we keep saying your experiences and your stuff. It doesn't even have to be a story that you personally have. It's a story that's in your circles.
Mhm.
Like it's a story you heard from an ex or a best friend or whatever. It's all valid. It doesn't have to be your personal point of view to still be a valid thing. And don't forget, like no matter what you're writing, and no matter who you're writing for, you're never gonna make everybody happy. If you write queer characters that don't face any struggles, guess what? You're writing lesbian Mary Sue, right? Like that's the if you don't give them enough struggles, however many struggles is enough for whoever is reading your stuff, like then you're just fucking Mary Suing it up, right? Like so fuck it. But if it's cathartic for you to write about a queer character that just fucking has a dope-ass life and everything is going great for them, and that's a story that might cheer people up, then hell yeah, like do it. So it's whatever, and the struggles that queer characters face don't have to be queer struggles, right? You can still just have a gay person getting fired for their job for something that has nothing to do with homophobia.
Yeah,
right?
because Jerry took all the credit for your work and that sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be because of whatever reason. It can just be because Jerry's a dick.
Yeah, and not every struggle needs to be marginalized people's struggles. It could just be a struggle. And the way they overcome it doesn't need to be marginalized people overcome, right? Like if you want to show some solidarity in the gay community as a nod to your friends, fucking dope, awesome, right? But also, it doesn't have to be like queer powers activate, right? Like they can just overcome stuff the way any other hero would overcome stuff. So there's all that. The other kind of when in doubt way to balance stuff is just like don't make them nothing but the struggle, right? And this is something that Ash and I talked about in our session 0 before starting this Song of Ice and Fire game, and that we went back to because we're talking romance and consent and forced marriages in Westeros and homophobia in Westeros and queer representation in Westeros. So I've been real careful to go back to it, and that kind of loops us back around to gaming a little bit more. Make sure you talk to your players about this shit with the representation. Make sure they're comfortable. If they're not comfortable and they're uncomfortable for a shitty reason, like because they're homophobic, then like maybe fuck them. Like just get them out of your game, or ask why they're uncomfortable. And it might just be that any graphic sex makes someone uncomfortable. That's valid, right? But session 0 is really important in games, especially dealing with marginalized topics and sexuality topics and stuff like that. But like one of the things that came up in the several thousand words of back and forth between me and Ash, because that's how Ash and I roll, is that like Ash said, I don't want Adam to be happy right away. Like, I feel like there are stories to be told about this adorable little guy that everybody loves, having his little fucking heart broken. So, like, I said, okay, how and why is okay for that? So, when, some of Adam's queerness came to the fore, it wasn't because Adam got beat up by the Kettle Blacks who called him mean names and gay bashed him, right? It was over a crush on an NPC. And then when the time came for that NPC to respond, I said, okay, Ash, is it okay if it doesn't quite work out as long as it's not homophobic, right? And we worked it out. And there was a concern on my end as a GM, are we over plotting this too much? Because I still want it to be a meaningful emotional moment to you. It's going to be a surprise to everybody, but like this is your character and your story, and I still want it to be cathartic to you. So I wanted to make sure we weren't over plotting, but I wanted to more make sure that I wasn't going to make my friend uncomfortable. And that's like doubly fucking true because this is a game that's live streaming on Twitch. So like you need to be extra careful of your friends and their feelings in a game that's going to be on the goddamn internet, right? Like I don't want to, make one of my fucking friends cry or some shit on the internet, So it's extra care, but these are valid issues to tackle in gaming if people want to tackle them. It doesn't have to be an official consent worksheet, but P.S. do a search for like RPG consent worksheet because they have a whole book called Consent in Gaming, but they made sure that the worksheet in the back everybody could see for free. Download it, print it, use it. But like it doesn't need to be a formal worksheet. Just talk to your friends. talk to your players, make sure people are comfortable with these topics, because that's another important part of representation in gaming, whether it's writing tie-in fiction or telling a story at your game table. There's absolute validity in tackling these topics, and these are topics that should be tackled because they are valid stories. But you want to make sure people are comfortable with them, and that includes, for lack of a better term, aftercare. I know that's a term that's generally used in some kink circles, but it's still a fucking thing, right? Like check in with players afterwards. If you're trying to help somebody in like a powerful narrative game with a deeply personal story of a gay basher having the tables turned because oops, turns out that queer kid's a werewolf, right? Like fucking whatever, like cool, but check in with your player beforehand and check in with your player afterwards, because the odds are good somebody doesn't want a cathartic story about gay bashing for no reason, right? So that shit can still be totally validly triggering, right? Especially if you start dropping some slurs or faking an accent, and you know what I mean? Like that shit that, just check on it, just check on it. Because you're supposed to be gaming with your friends, right? That's the point of this whole goddamn hobby. So treat them like friends and check with them beforehand and check on them afterwards, and just make sure that like everybody's cool. And when possible, still offer like choice, even in a setting or a game where you're going to include topics of romance and political marriages. I'm trying to still present options to my players so that it's not crossing heteronormativity with railroading, right? Like two great tastes that taste great together. Like I'm trying to set things up for players so that they're going to have like at least 3 options for their marriage in this game, because I don't want to force anybody into something they're going to be uncomfortable with, and because we're doing an RPG fucking still, and I want it to matter in the game. So I want gamers to make meaningful choices. So if you're crossing the streams like that, make sure that you're also keeping the game in mind and presenting your players with a choice. Don't make them just fucking sit through rape threats or, God forbid, a goddamn rape scene, right? Like in the Tomb Raider reboot, there's a dude that is grabbing young Lara Croft and gets kind of gross in this cutscene. And part of the problem was it was a goddamn cutscene. Like, okay, sure, later maybe you get to shoot that dude in the head or whatever, but it's a cutscene. You have to sit and watch it. It's fucking unskippable narrative type of bullshit. And like that's another layer of not okay. If it's stuff that's kind of forced on people and that they can't respond to in the game that you're playing, that's another thing to look out for with this sort of stuff that can make the hobby unwelcoming.
Yeah, and that's another reason, like what you were saying, is check in with them before and after game, because like, hey, if you have one of those scenes that could be troubling or could be triggering, it's one of those like check in after the fact. It's like, hey, just trying to like make sure that everything's good. Like, are you good with this? It's super important.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to point out is we did link Ash's stuff in the chat. Admittedly, it's about probably 6 minutes ago, so everybody should go check that out. I also did include, because the Consent in Gaming was the Monty Cook one, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, that was, and it's come up in the like opening narrative. What is an RPG in a lot of other games? Like a lot of games have tackled that shit or put in sidebars. Fucking shout out to the latest Cthulhu stuff, where they put in like a big box text going, H.P. Lovecraft was racist and that fucking sucks, and that's not what we're here for.
And I love how
like,
unapologetic they were about it too when people called them out on it.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, okay, whatever. See ya, blocked.
Yeah, it's like it's
And, you know,
cool
like,
that you don't like that we called that out. Go fuck yourself, though.
yeah. And that's some stuff that I've tried to do. I am not as big a name as Monty Cook, or whatever, but it's stuff that I've tried to also be aware of in my RPG stuff, not just my fiction. But if people are familiar with Warhammer 40K, I worked on some stuff for Wrath and Glory, the latest incarnation of the 40K RPG. And the story hook I got was Eldar go to a human psionics prison with a bunch of crazy psychers in it while chaos is taking over the planet. So everybody's crazy and everything is awful and it's all shit, right? And I put in a sidebar going, hey, uh, we're not talking about real life insanity here. We're talking about over the top sci fi pulp fiction, demons are real insanity.
Warp fuckery, as we call it
Yeah.
at my table.
So, yeah. So, like, it's not belittling people with real life mental health issues. It's not making light of that. They are not threats in real life. They are threatened in real life. And also, later in this chapter, they're going to experience warp visions from these hypnotists that are Eldar themed temptations, because the Eldar are kind of famous for over the top passion. So, like, hey, be careful which of those, 6 warp fantasies you pick for which players. Don't make it weird at your table. Check with them before you do the gluttony one or the lust one or the perversion one. Just fucking be aware of who your friends are, and you can skip all that if you want to. There's one generic one that's just violence that's perfectly valid for anybody playing Warhammer 40K. So, like, also just don't roll on that fucking table if it's going to make shit weird. So, like, when you're writing an adventure, you can take that shit in. And here's something I want to say. I haven't always done that. Just like I was kind of poking fun at the World of Darkness for being clumsier back in the day, my first Shadowrun stuff was the adventure Elven Blood, that anthology of series, or that anthology of adventures. The first of those adventures is Ancient Pawns, and in that one, because I wanted to show people doing good work in the name of the ancients, they go after a dwarven pimp that is kidnapping elven girls, because I wanted to show the ancients look after their community. Later on, they hijack a truck full of food and they give it all to the kids. And, so what I meant to be gritty cyberpunk Robin Hood shit was surprise sex trafficking, right? And hey, that was not very cool of me 10 or 12 years ago when I wrote that shit. I would not write that the same right now. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with, like, getting better at this shit as you grow up. I am not the person at 40 that I was at 30 that I was at 20.
I mean, that's part of. I mean, that's just part of being a decent human, is just evolving beyond what you were and getting consistently better over time. Because I mean, it's like what you said. You're not the same person as you were at 30, at 20, and all that. I mean, I'm not the same person that I was at 20, and I'm damn glad of it. And I'm also damn glad I'm not the same person that I was at 15, because good God.
So yeah, don't be hard on yourself if you are not the perfect that we are theoretically talking about tonight. When we say, here's what to do if you see someone harassed, like, don't be down on yourself if you're not that. Don't be down on yourself as a GM if you haven't done session 0 stuff. So whatever. So yeah,
Ash put in a really,
you're supposed
really
to level
good
up.
question now.
Sure.
What do you
1 second
feel?
as I read.
Oh, okay. I was gonna read out loud as well.
Oh,
So, what do you
okay,
feel
you do it again.
is a good way to deal with things if you're playing in a game and something you thought you were okay with turns out to be not okay? If a trigger takes me, hypothetically, by surprise, how do I express that to the GM without derailing the session? And also, what is the best practice as a GM in a situation like this?
Best practice is derail the session. Don't be afraid of not derailing the session. Don't be afraid of interrupting. Don't be afraid of not being rude. And I know that all of that is harder if you have anxiety issues, if you have trained yourself, or rather been trained by society because you're on the autism spectrum, if you've been taught not to ever interrupt, right? Or if you were raised a girl and were told never to interrupt. Like, I know this is all shit that makes it a lot harder for some people than for others. So, but yeah, just derail the session. Don't be afraid to not derail it, because that shit's not okay. And just say, at minimum, you can just go, guys, I need a minute, and just fucking leave for 5 minutes, go outside, chew some gum, smoke some cigarette, whatever. Smoke some cigarette, smoke some marijuana drug dose. Yeah. But just go fucking take a break. Not every table needs to have X cards or whatever. Just, as Mac yelled, and as I yell all the time, games are supposed to be fun. If you are not having fun, then do not play that game. And that includes take a break right then. And that includes nip that shit in the bud so that the GM knows not to keep going down that plot line. And that also up to includes fuck that game group. Don't hang out with people that don't take your comfort seriously. And that goes for not just gaming, like
in
fuck,
life.
yeah, like fuck your family if they don't like who you are. If they don't care about your mental health issues and your comfort and stuff like that, just like whatever. Like, this is me giving you permission to just fuck that noise.
Yeah, and I do like what Erica said in the chat, that you can set up a phrase system to quickly pause or stop, like stoplight, green, yellow, red. And Rusty, you were saying to maybe step away and just be like, hey, I need a minute. One of the things that I have done in the past is I've just been like, hey guys, give me 1 second. Let's just pause for a minute. I need to step out for whatever reason. And I mean, we live in a world where cell phones are extremely easy to take with you, and just step out of the room, text your GM, hey, can we talk for a second? And just, if you don't want to do it in front of everybody, just pull them off to the side and be like, hey, can we not do what we're doing? Because it's feeling a little triggery. It's not sitting right with me. And, and again, I mean, Eric is dropping really great advice here. If you have games with sexual themes, just give a rating system. I mean, hell, even go around the room and just be like, hey, so I'm thinking, there may be some sexual situations you guys find yourselves in. What is your movie rating that you're comfortable with? And those can change.
Yeah, this is perilously close to like my whole session zero spiel. But I've used the movie rating system as my example in like seminars I give about this for forever, because it's so intuitive for Americans. Use the different movie rating system wherever you are. But like, that's something that is just such quick shorthand. And again, doesn't only have to apply to matters of like gender and sexuality and stuff, right? Like, if you're playing default fucking turn your brain off D&D, 10 by 10 room with 10 orcs in it, some people are still going to be more comfortable with violence than others in the way it is described, right? So like, just check on that shit, man. And if you're new to the group, don't be afraid to start the conversation. If you're new, just go, so hey, how are we doing this? And you can learn a lot about their answer. If their answer is rolling their eyes and snickering and calling you an SJW,
later, fuckers.
Yeah, just like flip over the game table and leave. And this is me as a game developer giving you permission to flip over that table. Just like, fuck it. Like, those are not people you need in your life. The story that you would tell in that RPG is not worth that. So yeah, just get out. Yeah.
Perfect.
And yeah, it's just, you deserve better than that.
Especially in your gaming and in your escapism and in your fun. Because like we've harped on at least multiple times in the 3 episodes we have done this show. If your fun isn't fun, just get the fuck out and find somebody you can have fun with, because there are plenty of people who will accept you for who you are, and what you want to play, and where your limits are. And if that means that you're not playing a meat space game and you have to go online, hey, most of my best friends I know from the online community, and I may have only met once or have not met at all. So,
Yeah, I mean, we live in the year of our Lord 2020. These are not the geeky days of like 1982, peak satanic panic when only nerds played D&D, right? Like fucking, like you got Critical Role and stuff, but then you also got like Vin Diesel, right? Like geekery is not an oppressed minority in and of itself in pop culture at large. So it is not hard to find a geek, right? Like we live on the internet, which is how we are all interacting right now. My wife and I are not talking face to face. She is in this chat right now with Ted. And like find better friends, find a better game group, find a better community. Jump ship from that subreddit and go to this one, whatever. Just yeah, like find a game where you're welcome, because I promise there is one. Even if, sticking with that movie rating thing, even if all you're fucking into is like hard X every session and like whatever, man, like you're going to be able to find that game. Like there are servers set up on Overwatch, a first-person shooter video game, where people fucking role play instead of shooting each other. They just pop in there and they use voice chat and match chat to fucking hang out and role play as their characters. Like you can find whatever you are looking for better or worse, on the internet. Like I promise you can find someone that wants the role-playing game that you want. However lewd it is or innocent it is, however X-rated or PG-rated it is, whatever you are after, queer, straight, or in between, I promise you can find someone else on the internet that is into that. And guess what? Two people makes a gaming group.
yep. And that's I mean that's a really good point too. That I mean, that's it's kind of good and bad that we have all of these connectable people, because that's one of the things that a lot of people that I've talked to in the communities that I'm a part of, we're very much a when did hate become cool? When did all of these people just come out of the woodwork? And it's like a lot of it has to do with how connectable we are. And I mean, if hate groups can find each other, then so can gaming groups, so can good groups, so can good people. I mean, that's part of the reason why we started Riot House Entertainment in the first place, was to give a community to people who may not be able to find one, and who may not have one in their everyday life that feels welcoming and that feels inclusive. And that's what we try to do here. But it's getting a bit later than what we normally run, so I think we'll probably call it there. But we'll have you back on again, Rusty. I mean, the fact that we went for almost 2 hours tells you that we both have a lot to say.
Sure, and anytime I'm not playing Earth Dawn on a Monday night, I'm down, y'all. I'm happy to help out, particularly like this podcast. Because again, I want people to see a chubby, middle-aged, bearded white guy that has been a geek for literally more than 30 years and that writes this shit. I want them to see me hanging out with my queer friends, talking queer stuff, and saying what needs to be said. So yeah, I'm happy to come anytime you lot will have me.
All right, so Rusty, pitch your shit, man. Let people know where they can find you.
Okay. First off, I already tossed up a link to Adversary. If you like Adversary for 99 goddamn cents, you're welcome. I also argued real hard for that low price point. If you enjoy Adversary, check out some more of my stuff right there on Amazon. I recently did a story that is also quite on topic for this. And that's in the Nisaba Press Journal. Mutants and Masterminds superhero story for Green Ronin. I wrote a story about an ethnically diverse, queer as hell superhero team fighting the alt-right. Just literally, that was my hook to my dope-ass editor, Jaym Gates, Jaym. She is super badass. So check that one out. It's a lot of fun. Like that's literally the whole goddamn story is queer superheroes fighting the alt-right. So check that out. Check me out every other Sunday on Twitch. I'm on the Shadowcasters Network running a Sea of Spears, which Ash and I have referenced a few times. Our party is gay as balls. We have, like, we're pretty sure one of the 4 siblings is straight. And we know that that is it. Like, so yeah, it's, we're leaning way into the Dornish angle. I made it a Dornish house for a reason. And that's because in the Western European fantasy setting of Westeros, Dorne is not that thing.
And it's hashtag
Dorne,
the best area and the best major house.
yeah,
Great house. Jesus,
we'll see about that. But Dorne is cool. Dorne has women's lib compared to most of Westeros. Women can inherit and be the lords here. Women can fight in Dorne. Everybody of every gender can have consorts and not concubines, but consorts and I guess it's just consorts. But like you're allowed to have a little on the side, and it is just fine in Dorne. The go-to Dornishman that everybody loves, rightfully, is the dope-ass Mandalorian who played the Red Viper / Prince Oberyn Martell, Pedro Pascal. Is it Pedro? Fuck, did I just get my names mixed up? Fuck. I was just talking about
you're right.
Hispanic characters in Star Wars. Okay.
Yeah, it's Pedro. I
sorry.
say Pascal. It might be Pascal.
Yeah, but he is dope-ass, and he is like openly, violently bi. In the first goddamn scene you see him in, he's like, "What's up? I'm queer as hell. Also, fuck you Lannisters." Like it's great. So I wanted to grab onto that angle of Dornishness, and we're fucking leaning right into it in this game. I've made sure a whole lot of gay NPCs have swung by. I've made sure that we're doing a bunch of gay romance in this, like the most prominent of romances in this setting setting so far has been the absolutely adorable, fantastically dramatic romance brought to us by the dapper and dashing Shakespearean actor, Ash, who's here in chat with us. It's just been great. It's been a lot of fun. We are having a good time with it. And hopefully you'll come hang out with us every other Sunday for your fix of Westeros. I specifically mentioned the Red Viper. He is showing up tomorrow morning in game. They just found out that Prince Oberyn Martell is coming to visit them at their keep. So it's going to be really cool. Him and
makes me really
some
happy.
of the same. Yeah, we are just now kicking off the second big arc, so it's a really cool time to jump in. But yeah, check us out there. Check out some of my writing. If you enjoy Adversary, pick up Neat and then Shaken. Those are stories about the same character, Jimmy Kincaid. There is more Jimmy Kincaid coming. There is a novella that's on the way that is also Jimmy Kincaid fucks over conservatives. I specifically wrote this novella Chaser because some buddies were being assholes in the Shadowrunners Union and telling people that furries don't belong in Shadowrun. So I was like, oh yeah? I'm going to go write a story. Hey, kid, tell me about your character. Your furry is canon now. Get wrecked. Fucking Catgirl in a Jimmy Kincaid story. Suck it, nerds. So So Chaser is on the way. Stirred, the next novel in the Jimmy Kincaid story, is on the way. That's the one where Hardpoint comes out, so it's kind of a good time. And there's lots of point of view stuff from Trace and Skip, the lesbian couple. So like I'm pushing the queerness out there as much as I can, and it's been a lot of fun. So yeah, check out some of my stuff. I hope you like it, and if so, feel free to hang out with me on Twitter or Facebook, where I rant like this all the fucking time. If you are down for this blend of politics and geekery, and you also like dogs, I am your dude. Sound is gone. I don't know if you guys can still hear me or not. James just explained that his dogs need to go outside, so we really need to wrap it a little faster than we even thought. And the sound is gone again. Bye, everyone, just in case.